In today's Thrift with me, I brought ChatGPT along as my personal shoe sourcing assistant. I'll be showing you the pairs I passed on this thrift trip, all the maybes that I ran through AI, and for each pair that I did grab, I'm going to show you screenshots on the screen with listing price or the selling price if the shoes have already sold. It was my first time using ChatGPT to check comps, and it was a huge learning experience to say the least. So I'll also be sharing some of the lessons and mistakes that I learned along the way. I usually don't find that many good athletic pairs when I go sourcing. On this day, that is the first thing I saw. Starting with these New Balance men's shoes, they were priced at $40, but on this day, yellow tags were 50% off and everything else was 25% off. After that 25% discount, these were $30. But this is a style I've never sold before, so I ran these through ChatGPT and it said that the comps averaged anywhere between $65 and $90. They were in excellent condition, so I felt that I could push to get that higher end of those comps. So I went ahead and added those to my cart. And right after running those first shoes, I learned my first lesson when it comes to using ChatGPT to source, and that is to prime ChatGPT ahead of time. By that I mean it's better if you start the chat before you get to your sourcing spot. Start conversating with the app and tell it what you're doing, that you're a reseller, where you list your items, on what platforms, and if you know the sale of the store you're going to, let it know that ahead of time. That way you don't waste time going back and forth with it, trying to explain what kind of information you're looking for. It'll already be dialed in and ready for your first query. That's what I plan to do next time I go sourcing. I spotted this infamous plus sign on these shoes. This brand is called 511 Tactical, which is a brand that makes high quality, durable shoes. These I do regret not getting. They were in great condition. They had that Vibram sole, which adds value, and the final price was decent at around $13. And apparently I have sold these shoes before. I didn't remember that at the time. The only bad thing though was that the insoles were missing. Still, I ran comps and ChatGPT said that for these shoes without insoles, I could get $50, which would have still been worth it. But I don't like bringing shoes home that need something, whether it's shoelaces, insoles, or anything like that, because I know that I'll just keep putting it off. But looking back at it now, I should have just brought them and listed these shoes as is, at least. This boot brand is called Vask, and it is a good one. I sold a couple of them on consignment before and they did really well. The condition overall was great on the outside. The inside though was not the best. I did like that I had that Gore-Tex and that Vibram feature too. Those are great keywords to add to listings. ChatGPT was encouraging me to buy them. It said it'd be a fast flip, but because of the condition inside, I didn't get them after all. Next up, we have some Echo leather Oxford shoes. My final cost for these would have been $22.50, and that is way too high. They did look high quality though, so I thought they're at least worth looking up. But in the end, it didn't look good. The final selling price is usually around $30, and after platform fees, my profit would be practically nothing, so I definitely passed on those. This brand was called Martini Dingman or something like that. I've never heard of it, and when I don't know a brand, the first thing I do is look inside and see what information it has, whether it's made of leather, where it's made. All of that tells me if it's even worth looking up. Also, it did have a Vibram sole. I put them in the cart to check later, but in the end, I never did. I had too much good stuff already. I just left them. They didn't look that special. The only Pumas I know about are Fenty Pumas and Y2K Pumas. Other kind of Pumas I don't know that much about, so I will look them up when I find them just to make sure I'm not passing up on something profitable. These had way too much wear though to even consider looking up. That was a quick pass. Then I came across another pair of New Balance. This is the same style as earlier but a different colorway. These were a college edition too. GPT said this model was in high demand, and at a $30 buy cost for me, the profit margin was solid. Size 11 is a good popular size, it said, and if I emphasize the Boston College colorway, it should be a quick flip within 1 to 3 weeks, so that was a yes. These white Nike Metcons looked promising at first. They would have been $30 after the discount, but it did have some yellowing in some parts. I tossed them in the cart to decide later, but in the end I just left them behind because of the condition. Dress shoes is always good to check out when they have the wingtip detail and brogue detail. These were by that Johnston & Murphy brand, which is good to pick up sometimes, but not for $15, and these weren't unique enough or in good enough condition to justify that price. I spotted these kids' Jordan shoes. They looked clean overall. They did have a little bit of peeling inside, but that kind of stuff can be easily fixed with a sweater shaver. But I'm a bit traumatized with Jordans because I've bought fakes before. That's why I just left them behind. I was scared they weren't going to be real and they weren't cool enough to pay to authenticate them. But I really do need to educate myself more on authenticating Jordans because I may be skipping really good flips just because I don't want to take the time to do it while I'm at the store. And to authenticate, by the way, I usually use the Check app. Now these fit flops I do know a lot about. The condition on these was okay, but it could be made excellent real quick with a quick wipe. The final cost for me was $9.75. They were a unique ballet wedge flat with a little bit of croc embossing, so that was an easy yes. No comps needed. Anne Klein is a brand that I will buy sometimes, but the criteria for that is really strict. It must be really cheap and like new. The like new was there on these, but the really cheap part was not. Even if on this day it was a half off day sale, it wouldn't be worth it. I like to buy some Jessica Simpson dressy shoes, but these were way too dirty. These Zara women boots were new with tags. They were marked at $35. Even with that 25% discount, that's way too much for Zara boots. I got so excited to find these torrid boots. This burgundy color is trendy right now. I could not take them because the price was way too much. They would be $17 after my discount, and usually I'd pay like $10 to $12 for something like that, so that was way off. I just left them. Next, I checked these naturalizer boots. They were $16.91. Even though they were an older tag, the condition was nice. It would have been a maybe if it was a little bit cheaper and if we were in winter, but since they're out of season and too expensive, that was a pass. Dog and cat stuff always sells well, but only if they're a good brand, like Skechers or Tom's. They were a cheap online brand probably. These right here would have been an easy yes. They're by Earth Origins. I think I have a few right now in my closet in different colors. These did really well last year during the summer for me, but I didn't like the condition whatsoever on these, so I left those. For a minute, I thought these shoes were by Todd's. I just saw the DS at the end, but they turned out to be David's bridal heels, not in good condition, so no thanks. This is one of my favorite brands to pick up, Born. These navy blue sandals were beautiful. The condition wasn't horrible and there wasn't any heel drag. The only thing was the footbed. It was a little bit dirty, but I felt like that was an easy cleanup. There was no peeling in the straps. They were intact, and at $9, 25% off, that was something I could work with. And these sold already. I think you should see the screenshot. As you can see, I have used ChatGPT for a few comps by this point, but for the most part, I am using my own common sense that I've built over the past 7 to 8 years of reselling. And that's one of the biggest things I quickly realized when it comes to using ChatGPT for comps. You should only use it if you already know what you're doing, because if it's your first time using ChatGPT, it's going to take some trial and error to know what prompts to use to get the responses you're looking for. And even so, ChatGPT can make mistakes sometimes, and the only way you're going to be able to catch those mistakes and discrepancies is if you have a vast knowledge of sourcing beforehand. I think this is more of a tool to help you combine its research with your knowledge to help you make a buying decision. Here are some more naturalizer boots, just like the ones I showed earlier, but these are even more beautiful because of that brown chestnut looking color. They looked great, in great condition, but again, at $17, even with the discount, it was not worth it. Soft is another one of my favorite sandal brands to pick up during the summer. These were marked at $10 before the discount, so in the end I paid like $7.50. I prefer to keep my cost for basic simple sandals like this closer to $5. I was still gonna pick them up anyway though, because the condition seemed excellent. But then I checked the inside and it had some oil looking stains along the strap, so I decided to skip those after all. Antonio Milani does sell for a lot at department stores, but when it comes to reselling, you can't get much for it. So at $35 for these, that was a definite no. I was making sure these SpongeBob printed shoes weren't something special because collabs are a great thing to look out for, but they were just a cheap brand. This pair of Vans threw me off because I couldn't tell if they were customized or if all that artwork was actually made by the brand. The final price for these was $11.25, which wasn't too bad. So I asked ChatGPT about them and it confirmed it was an official Vans release. The artwork was actually made by the brand. The average sale price it gave me was between $60 and $80, but because my size was a bit small and the condition was good, maybe even great, but not excellent, I listed mine at $49. These pointed toe flats were by the brand Rothy's, which in the past, this was like a holy grail, a jump for excitement moment if you ever found it. Nowadays, it's not as much unless you find some cool designs and some newer styles. These were $5 before the discount, which is really great. For solid colors like these black ones, I'd say I could probably get like $25 to $35. Sometimes these are dirty, but the good thing about these is that they're washable, so you just throw them in the wash and they'll end up looking like new. But then I noticed a little bit of separation starting at the front toe box. I always check that front toe box, especially if it's a pointed toe. It wasn't that bad, so I put them in my cart to think about it, but in the end I didn't buy them because of that separation, and also the size was really small. It was a 5.5, and that tends to sell slower sometimes. These 9 West pointed toe kitten heels is a trendy style that does really well for me, but I don't like the lace-up detail on shoes nowadays. It seems like it's not really a desirable style. The price was $7.50 after the discount, but the condition was like new, so I put them in my cart thinking I'll try to at least get $25 out of them, but later I left them because I was finding too much good stuff and those were iffy to me anyway. Same with these chunky braided torrid sandals. They were so pretty, also priced at $7.50. They appear to be in like new condition, so I put them in the cart and later I took them out because I did find a few scuffs. And torrid is one that I usually don't play with when it comes to condition because unless they're like knee-high boots or something, with that brand, I feel like the resale value drops significantly even with a minor flaw. I usually do get these kind of pumps. They do really well on Depop, and Wild Fable is a Target brand that does okay, but only if they are in like new condition. These were not, so I put them back. So Society is a good brand in sandals too, but these had too much wear. These Gianni beanie pumps were so pretty, so retro looking, and $7.50 was not a bad price. I checked the heel cap, the bottom, and the inside for any peeling or cracking. Everything looked really good, so I did get those, and they sold pretty quickly on eBay, I think. These 9 West pumps were also very pretty. I like the unique colors and patterns. They were like new at $8.99, and then with the 25% off, they could have possibly worked, I put them in my cart, but later when I did my final sorting, they just didn't make the cut. These BB pumps were way too beat up everywhere, not even worth looking into them further. I've sold 2 of these exact style sandals, but by the brand Madden Girl recently. They sold real quick. These were torrid, but pretty much the same style, so I thought, why wouldn't it do well? They were like new. I paid $6.75 after the discount. That was a really good deal to me. I did get them, and I believe these also sold already. These mud sandals caught my eye. I liked the boho style. I just felt like there was too much fraying everywhere. Then Benji pointed out that it also had an orange stain on the side, and that made it a definite no. Crown vintage sandals are popular for me during the summer, and everyone's looking for pretty sandals right now. These were basically like new, but the price was way too high for this brand in a basic sandal. They weren't that special to justify the price. If it was half off day, I would have probably got these though. These Sam Edelman thong sandals were the summer go-to for everyone a few years ago. That $9 price tag could have possibly worked with these, but they weren't in the best condition, and that pattern was too simple, so it was a no. Then I came across another FitFlop shoe. These glittery sandals were so pretty in like new condition. I hate when shoes drop a lot of glitter everywhere, so here I was checking for that. It did have a little bit of glitter transfer, but it wasn't excessive, so I did get those. Lane Bryant is like torrid to me, but it seems like I can't get as much for them as I used to be able to. So I need to be a lot more picky with this brand from now on. These had some scuffs on the footbed, darkening near the toe box, so I just left them. I love picking up bright red pinup retro style shoes like these, but for $20 for some Gianni beanie pumps with scuffs throughout, that's crazy. These sandals were quite unique. It was some made in Italy type brand. Sometimes those can be worth a lot. I would have at least looked them up if they were in better condition. Most of the shoes I ran across in these past few clips, I didn't have to look up, but there are a handful that are coming up that I did have to check comps for. And that's when I learned the third lesson: one prompt at a time. ChatGPT doesn't take a long time to come back with results, but in an effort to speed things up as I was checking a lot of comps at once, I was trying to send another shoe while it was still working on the first one, but that failed. Things got confusing real quick. So that's another tip I have: one thing at a time. You can type up your next message with a picture if you want, just don't send it until it's done researching its first query. This would have been nice, one of my favorite brands, Vionic, but that footbed, it was way too dirty. I could probably scrub it down, let it dry, and it'd look real good, but no thanks, I don't want to do all that work. Then we have these naturalizer shoes. Anytime I get a naturalizer Mary Jane patent leather shoe like this, they are very popular and they get a lot of attention. The heel drag was very minor. These would be $6.25 after the discount. All that made it an easy yes. These Skechers strappy sandals used to do well for me a few summers ago, so I thought they were at least worth looking up, but I don't think I ever did. I just left them. Then I found even more flip-flops. They were gonna need a little more cleaning than I'd like, but because this brand is performing really well right now, the price was decent, the pattern and the color were cool, it was a big yes. These UGG Moto boots sell really well for me during the fall and winter. There was a little bit of creasing on the toe box, but that could be easily fixed with some brown packing paper and some leather balsam. But it did also have some heel drag, and for $30, even with the discount and they're out of season, I was not convinced, so I left them. Cliffs by White Mountain is not worth that much, but these were wide width in like new condition. I also liked the perforation all around, and it had like a V cut in the front. I thought they were unique and different enough and had enough good things going for it, so I decided to take the risk on those. These Chelsea and Violet ballet flats were so pretty in a velvet pink color. I could see these doing really well on Depop with keywords such as coquette and fairy, but the bottom was way too dirty. I like picking up this brand Dream Pairs, and like Anne Klein and Nine West, I like them to be in like new condition, which these were, but that price was not low enough for me, especially in that knit style. Those usually sell for less and they can take a bit longer. These wedge pumps by Soft, on the other hand, were really good, in good condition as well, and the price was great. The style was different from regular pumps, so I did get those. These slingback pumps by Naturalizer could have worked, but the inside didn't look great at all, so that was a no. I'm gonna say this brand wrong. It's something like Palladium, I think, or Palladium. These boots were really cool. They were grungy looking, which I love, but the wear and the $20 price tag did not work for me. Here's this brand that's by Soft, but it's their lower end brand. It's called Eurosoft. Not the best pickup or the most profitable flip of the day, but the condition was excellent, so I did get these. These Adidas Superstar shoes looked intriguing to me. They were $40, $30 after the discount. I've never sold some like these before, so I decided to ask ChatGPT to check the market for me. From what it found, it looked like I could get $40 to $55 for them. After my cost and the platform fees, that didn't look good, so I left those. These next ones I did get though. They were women's and they were the New Balance Fresh Foam. My final cost was $20. They were in great condition, and according to GPT, the average selling price was around $40 to $50 for used in good condition. But after doing my own pricing research, I decided to list them for $79 instead, and they ended up selling on Poshmark with an offer for $60. I've never seen Gianni Beanie shoes that were wide width like these. That was an instant plus for these Mary Jane pumps. But also they gave me this whimsy goth type of vibe because of all of the black and the material mix. It was a satin and a patent leather. Whimsy goth shoes are one of my favorite style of shoes to sell on Depop, and it's one of the fashion styles I illustrate and talk about in my keyword ebook. If you'd like to check it out, I'll leave it in the description. Loafers in this brand called Vagabond do really well, which is why they probably had them priced at $35. I've sold them before for $60, so I would have considered that price tag if they were in a lot better condition. These UGG knit sneakers were a size 9, but the EU size was a 42, so that tells me that they're a men's shoe even though they were in the women's section. The price was $45, which is way too much for me to even take the time to look up comps for those. I came across more New Balance, but these had missing insoles. Also, they were white and a little bit dirty, so I put them back. They had a lot of athletic shoes this day. These Adidas Cloud Foams were in great condition, but again, they had the missing insoles, so I didn't get those either. Then we have these Brooke Adrenaline GTS shoes. The bottom was too bad, no thanks. I almost walked right past these gold shoes. It looked like nothing, but a quick look at the outsole told me they were Tory Burch sneakers, and to my surprise, they were a yellow tag, which was half off this day. I think this is the only yellow tag I found this day, so I got lucky and paid just $20 for some good condition Tory Burch sneakers. They weren't the typical flats or heels that I pick up by this brand, so even though I was pretty sure it was gonna be a yes, I still wanted to look them up. These have the potential to sell from $65 to $80. In my opinion, probably a little bit closer to $50. But even then, in the end, I'm sure I'll double or almost double my money with these. These Nike athletic shoes looked promising. They were in great condition, $18.75 after the discount. ChatGPT did encourage me to get them because of the condition, but there were some listed on eBay for about $25 to $30, so I didn't feel confident enough to get those in the end. Same with these blue and white Metcons. They were a 5.5 youth. My final cost would be $26 for those. Online, I could probably sell them for $30 on the low end, $45 on the high end. Those estimated profit margins were way too tight, so I didn't take those either. Then I came across some more New Balance 550 sneakers, also $30 like the other two, but these were women. They weren't in as good condition as the others. Still, I told myself I'd come back for them if in the end the others were a good pick. But in the end, I forgot all about them. Now, these silver shoes were a definite yes. They're by a brand called Birdies. I described the performance of this brand similar to Tory Burch. The sell-through rate is not that great. Oftentimes, it can take a few months to sell, but when it does, the price is great. So if I find them cheap enough at the store, the profit that comes from it is well worth the wait. Next pair I came across is also a good one. It's called Nailed, a very sought after comfort shoe brand. These sandals were in great condition. They were priced at $9 before the discount, so this was a solid pickup. These black ballet shoes were by Earthies, which apparently is made by the Earth brand, who used to be called Earth Origins. I don't know. It's all getting real confusing with this brand. But I really like these ballet flats. They were in good condition, but they did have a little bit of creasing. I ran them by GPT and it found that some new with box were selling for like $20. That didn't look good, so I didn't get them. I like selling Olukai, and these sneakers was something I would definitely have picked up in the past, but it seems like the sell-through rate and the sale price for this particular style has gone down. On top of that, these weren't in the best of condition, so I left those too. This brand Miss Moose, I love picking up. It sells pretty well, but I didn't like the condition. It was too dirty on the inside. I thought these were going to be Hey Dude shoes, but they were by a brand called Volcom. I thought that was something I've heard before, and at the bottom it said they were slip resistant and oil resistant. All of that made me think they were worth something, but it turns out they weren't. The average sale price was $18 to $28, and this store had these priced at like $18. I can't do nothing with those numbers, so of course I left those. Here's some more White Mountain shoes. These were in like new condition basically. I have that style or a very similar style in my closet already. They don't sell for that much, but I would have probably got those if they were a white fit. These boots were surprisingly by Naturalizer Gen N, it said in the tag, which I've never heard about. I didn't know such a thing existed. They were only $9, which is great. The top was in like new condition, but there was too much scuffing going on in the heel and the bottoms didn't look great. These next boots were pretty cool. They were by Skechers Tactical, which means they're very high quality work boots. They were also slip resistant and wide width, all really good stuff, but for $30 that was way too much. Hopefully they're still there on half off day and then I could maybe make those work. I pick up Western boot brands even if they're not name brand, but only if they're cheap enough, and these weren't. And the fact that it said 42 for the size and just the way the sole looks overall told me it was a cheap Amazon brand, so that was an easy skip. If only these Birkenstocks were a brown leather. For that $17 price, it would be so worth it. But these rubber kind of shoes usually don't sell for that much. Not in that condition anyway. These boots felt super heavy and they screamed goth and punk to me. They were by the brand Spica, something like that. It's a Californian brand. I've sold it before. It doesn't do all that great. Still, I like these a lot, so I would have maybe picked them up if they were a lot cheaper. But at $25, I didn't even want to take the time to research that. I was so surprised these red heels were by Charlotte Russe. I could usually spot that cheap brand from a mile away, but now they're starting to trick me. They're starting to look high quality sometimes. But as of now, Charlotte Russe is always a skip because it's a cheap mall brand as it is, so it really has no resale value. These boots were $13, plus I would get the additional 25% off. They were in excellent condition, and Chelsea boots do well for me most of the time. It was also great that they were this patent leather and they had that grungy and biker look. Overall, good potential here, but it did have some scuffs. Usually I can remove scuffs from patent leather with some nail polish remover, but those scuffs were deep. They looked unrepairable, so I didn't get those after all. These Crocs were so nice with the skull graphic all around. Halloween is still coming up and they were new with tags, slip resistant, very nice work or nursing shoes. The only thing is that they were a bit pricey, but I at least had to look them up. And what GPT found is that even brand new, they sell for about $30 on most occasions, and for $50 sometimes. So I could make a $4 final profit on the low end, or make a $20 profit if I get real lucky. I decided not to take that gamble. I left those behind. These men's sneakers looked real high quality. I never heard of this brand Arigato, but apparently the store also thought they were high quality and worth a lot because they had them priced at $65. They were basically like new, so I decided to ask ChatGPT to run comps on these too. It said it was a high-end brand that sells well on Poshmark, Depop, and eBay. It said it was a strong pickup, so I got them. But once I went to list them, I wasn't so sure. It looks like the sell-through rate is gonna be extremely slow. This is one that I should probably have looked up on my own a lot better, but we'll see. I could be wrong. These other New Balance were also in like new condition, priced at $38 before the discount, and according to ChatGPT's little chart here, these could sell anywhere from $95 to $100. But when I went to do my pricing research, I ended up listing them for $75 instead. So as you can see, ChatGPT is not always that accurate, but either way, I'm sure even with an offer, I'll be left with a $18 to $22 profit for these. Here's exactly what I said in this clip at the store. This is the best find of the day. Look at that price. I was so happy to find them. After the discount, I paid $15. No comps needed for these at all. I have them listed for $180 right now, and I expect them to sell within a month for about $120 to $140. That's usually how these fry boots perform for me, but we'll see. Now I'm moving back to the men's shoe section right here, and the first shoes I saw were these Stephen Curry shoes. Benji said he thought that was a new Curry logo, but the price was $55. I was on a budget and I already had a lot of good shoes, so I didn't even take the time to look those up. Some of the best selling collabs is Vans with Marvel. I sold a few in the past for high dollars. That's why these caught my attention. My final price for these were $13. They were in great condition and a unisex size, and even though they weren't that high top version, I still thought these would be a good pickup. And apparently so did ChatGPT. According to it, even if I sold it on the lower end or the mid-tier range, I would still make a good profit. But because I know the right keywords, I take good photos, all of my accounts are in good standing with excellent reviews, I'm shooting for those higher end comps. So I listed mine at $75, and I can always drop the price later if I need to. These Adidas shoes looked promising. I could tell they were a collab because they had unique markings throughout. I put them in my cart to check later, but it turns out after fees, I would probably be barely covering my costs, so it was a no. I did learn something here though, and that is to double check what ChatGPT tells you, because it got the style name for these wrong. To do my research, I would just send a picture to ChatGPT, the price that I'm paying, and the size. That would usually pull up the exact shoe for me with all of the research. But for these, I didn't realize until later when I got home and I was looking over things that it actually got the style name wrong for these shoes. So the research it gave me wasn't accurate. That's another thing I'm going to keep in mind next time I use ChatGPT to source. I'm going to be double checking that it got the style name right. This was another exciting find. $30 plus the discount for like new Hunter boots. You cannot beat that. I could usually tell if boots are men or women by looking at the sizing, but these threw me off. I couldn't tell. I guess Hunter uses different sizing, but it turns out they were women. I was like 90% sure these were a good pickup, but I asked ChatGPT to see what it had to say, and it said it was a good pickup. The listing prices were in the $90 range, but when I went to list them, I didn't see many of this matte style available on eBay, Poshmark, or Depop, and these were like new, as I said, so I'm shooting pretty high with these. I have them listed at $179 right now, And as luck would have it, right after those hunter boots, I spotted some more high-selling boots. These are by the brand Demonia, which is a popular punk goth brand. These again were in like new condition. They were $45 before the discount, but still pretty expensive for this brand. I sold a pair of shoes by this brand on Depop before. Even with a flaw, they did okay. They sold for like $80 or something like that. ChatGPT did advise me to skip these, but I did not accept that answer. I did my own comps on all platforms. After that discount, I paid $34. I have to sell them for at least $60 to make them worth it. I felt I could pull that off, but I'm going to shoot a little bit higher to start off with. I have them listed at $149 right now, and I intend to drop the price slowly over time until they finally move. The M at the bottom of these boots made me think they were Mephisto boots, which sometimes can do well. I couldn't find any other label anywhere saying that it in fact was Mephisto though, and the condition inside didn't look that great, so I didn't even bother checking comps for those. I showed these in a recent thrift haul, Dr. Comfort shoes. These were $8.99, which is an okay price for diabetic shoes, but I prefer picking up this brand only when it's in excellent condition. These weren't, so I left them behind. Here's some more Olukai shoes. These were $9. The bottoms look a little bit yellowish and a tiny bit worn, but there was no real heel drag, so I ran comps for them. They didn't look that great, so I skipped those. These were Stacy Adams little kid shoes. Last time I got some kid shoes by this brand, they turned out to do okay. These seemed to be in great condition, but when I started looking for the size, I saw there was a rip on the inside lining, so that instantly ruled out those. No comp needed. Here are some more 511 tactical shoes. I ended up leaving the other ones, but these were in great, like new condition everywhere. They wanted $30 before the discount. I looked these up. Comps didn't look amazing, but still I decided to take the gamble because of the like new condition. I feel like I can at least get $55, and even after fees, that's still a pretty healthy profit. I've been saying this brand name wrong this whole time. I always said Florsheim, but apparently a subscriber said it's Florisheim, I think. Anyway, I like picking up this brand from time to time if it meets certain criteria. These were a bit iffy though because of the price. Also, the condition was probably a 7 out of 10. Still, I decided to ask ChatGPT. It said it was a keeper. I was still suspicious though. I ran my own comps, and in the end, I felt because of the condition, the margins were too tight, so I just left these behind in the end. I've sold many of these bait shoes. They're like for security jobs or any profession where you have to wear formal uniforms. Sometimes these do okay, but I like to get them when they're in excellent condition and real cheap. These were neither of those, so it was a no. This brand struck me as something recognizable. Joseph About, something like that. It said it was genuine Italian leather. It did have the wingtip and the brogue accents. So they looked promising overall. ChatGPT thought so too. It gave me back some real good comps, but I don't know, I still wasn't convinced. I think that gray dress shoes is such a niche color, and the bottoms weren't great, so I didn't get those after all. Those brown shoes were by Deer Stag, which I think is a Walmart brand. Those I never ever get, no matter how great or how cheap. This store had a lot of stuff I've never seen before. Here we have some Hoka sandals. All I've ever seen was sneakers by them. Then again, I don't sell this brand a whole lot, so I'm not too versed on what styles they make or how much is a good price to pay. So I would have ran comps on these, but the condition wasn't that great, especially on the inside, so I didn't even bother. In a bit, I am going to share my final numbers for this thrift haul, the total spent and average cost of goods. But first, real quick, I want to give you my final thoughts on using ChatGPT to check comps. First thing is that it is not 100% reliable. As you saw in the clips, it did get a lot of the comps right, but it did get quite a few wrong too. I'm still very new at this, both using AI for comps and using it in general, and I know that sometimes it takes time. Like with comps, it's gonna take time to make it work for you. There are a few nuances that you can only learn through trial and error or from someone who has discovered the correct prompts to ask it already so that it spits out even more accurate data. But all in all, I think it does have great potential. Using ChatGPT as a sourcing assistant was very helpful. I'm excited to continue to work with it every time I go sourcing. I've been using it for other parts of my business, and from that I know that the better it knows you, the better information you can get from it. So my hope with checking comps is that over time, it'll learn my precise business model, profits I want, and all of that extra information so that it gets really good at doing in-depth research quickly for me. I'll keep y'all posted. Hopefully the air isn't too loud. I put it on the lowest setting because I am not turning it off. It's so hot today. That store went way better than expected. I did not expect to come here and find this many things. Well, it's only 29 items, but it's 29 very good items. There are a few just regular bread and butter stuff in there, but there are a bunch of stuff that I never usually find. All these athletic brands, and the condition on these things is like new. I'm sure y'all saw in the video already, but let me just do the math. Your phone is locked.
All you need to do is
I'm hot with her
swipe right here. Calculate.
Alright, so I spent a total of $508.88. I'm just going to round up to 509, and I got a total of 29 shoes. So that brings my average cost of goods to $17.55. That is the most I've ever spent when it comes to like average cost of goods at any one place or in any one single day. But I'm very confident that all these things are great things, and I am trying to slowly shift into a more high profit model, whereas before I would do regular. Okay, it's way too hot. I gotta turn it up some more. Oh Jesus.
It's not even that hot.
It is hot. Okay, so yeah, as I was saying before, it was more of like bread and butter stuff, things I already knew and was already confident were gonna sell, and the profit was gonna be anywhere from $10, sometimes $15. But now I'm trying to explore buying things, paying more up for them, but the final profit being more in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s even sometimes. So we'll see how this goes. If you watched all the way to the end, I thank you so much for watching. Follow me on Instagram for personal posts, and then I am going to eventually start posting sales on there. I think I'm still trying to figure out how I want to go about that. I don't want to commit until I know that I'm going to have time to do it often enough. But for now, you can follow me there for some behind the scenes every now and then, and a lot of just personal posts, me, my family, and things I do when I'm not working. Again, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.